what's happened, that you were blocked from entering Zimbabwe, but effectively the question is now moving forward. Do you think there'll ever be an opportunity for you to go to Zimbabwe to see for yourself the humanitarian crisis, or can we just say, well, the elders are not respected by the Zimbabwean authorities and you don't have a role to play?
I don't think we will be able to do it on this trip. We have to go back to our other activities, but I will not rule it out that at some time in the future we may want to do it again. But I must also stress that even though we didn't go to Zimbabwe, we were able to get the information we needed by talking to lots of people here and people coming from across from Zimbabwe to talk to us.
Let's talk about what those people have said. You've spoken to Zimbabwean exiles, to refugees, to the donor organizations that are involved in Zimbabwe. How dire is the situation according to them?
I think we've all known that there is a humanitarian crisis in Zimbabwe, and it's been there for some time. But what is new is a rapid acceleration of the deterioration. And this is where we need to really sit up and be careful. Take the issue of cholera. I mean, this region hasn't seen cholera for a long time, and yet we are told there are about 600 people suffering from cholera. And this is something that can cross the borders very easily. In fact, here in Johannesburg, there have been 3 cases. And I think the region has to come together, set up an urgent task force to see how they contain the situation and prevent a spread. The situation with education for the children is desperate. Schools are closing, hospitals are closing, water and sanitation systems are breaking down, and that perhaps partially explains the cholera. So it is an extremely serious situation that we need to try and bring under control as quickly as possible. And you heard about the economic and the financial situation. So it is not an easy life for the Zimbabweans who are stuck there.
As Mrs. Machel said, dealing with the humanitarian crisis has to go hand in hand with finding a resolution politically. And this is where the controversy comes in. The Zimbabwean government alleges that they didn't allow the elders in because of you, because according to them, you would interfere in that mediation and you're biased towards the MDC. How do you respond to that?
I think it's unfortunate that they come to that conclusion. If I'm biased in the interest of the people, in the interest of those who are suffering, in the interest of those who do not know where the next meal is coming from. I did not come here to get involved in the mediation. I have my hands full with other issues, but really we came on purely humanitarian issue grounds. But of course, the impasse has the political impasse has an impact on the situation. You need an effective working government to help the people, to work with the international community, to come up with the right policies and bring in assistance to the aid. And so in that sense, we are interested in progress on the political front, but we are not here to mediate or to interfere.
A lot has been said about the problems of facilitation, mediation in Zimbabwe. Did SADC do enough? Should it have been left to the African Union to intervene primarily? You have your own experience by way of brokering the coalition government in Kenya. And again, that was quite controversial because people say recalcitrant losers are rewarded in these sorts of arrangements. This is what happened in Kenya, and that model being emulated in Zimbabwe means that President Mugabe, a loser in an election, gets rewarded. There aren't sufficient punitive measures. How do you respond to that?
I think let me say that each situation is different, and it has its own specificities. I think for the Kenyan situation, power sharing was the best outcome. It was the outcome of the election results was a political gridlock. The government parties had 102 seats in parliament. The opposition had 102 seats. And they had gone through a very, very controversial elections with over 1,000 people killed. We considered all options: recount, retally, a rerun of the election. All of them would not have, neither of those options would have resolved the problem. In fact, you would have got more people killed, and you weren't certain that even that results would have been accepted, whether of the recount or the rerun. And in fact, one of the things we did, we also set up a commission to look into what went wrong with the Kenyan elections. And one of the main findings of the commission, which was chaired by a South African judge, Johan Kriegler, he and the team did a first-class job, after 4 months of investigation, traveling around the country, looking at the ballots, talking to the people, they concluded there's no way anyone could have could say who won and who lost the elections. And so in that sense, for them to come together, form a grand coalition, agree on reform agendas to get the country out of that difficulty and then have normal elections, I think was the right way to go. But power sharing is not a solution for every situation. People who run for office must enter elections knowing that they can lose and they can win, and that they are prepared to play by the rules and accept the results, not maneuver to get something you did not win at the ballot box.
Okay, now we're dealing with a situation where Zimbabwe has inflation of over 2 million %. We're dealing with 80% unemployment. We're dealing with HIV and AIDS. We're dealing with an exodus of people. That's the reality on the ground. The issue now is an economic stimulus package to reconstruct the Zimbabwean economy, once called the breadbasket of Africa. You've been spearheading an idea of an agrarian revolution across Africa. Do you think that's the first step by way of an economic solution to Zimbabwe?
One of the recommendations we made out of this was to help the small-scale farmers produce more. In other words, they will be pre-financed by giving them the seeds and the fertilizers, and also with a certainty that their produce will be bought, a assured market for school feeding, for other humanitarian activities within Zimbabwe and outside. And if you go that route, you are reviving the agricultural sector. And let's face it, Zimbabwe does have the capacity, it had the capacity, it was a breadbasket of the region, and it's really a shame that now we are looking at it as a basket case.
Right, okay, so moving forward, what can we do immediately?
I think immediately we have indicated we are appealing to the donors to assist in terms of financial assistance and material assistance. We are also asking them to fund the medium to the long, the short term to the medium term with the $550 million, and above all, work with us and the small-scale farmers to begin to resuscitate agriculture in Zimbabwe. But it is also extremely important for the politicians to get their act together and really resolve their differences in the interest of the people and the interest of their nation.